Hello, everybody. Here we are again, another month gone by, and I get to welcome you to another edition of Lab Manager Academy webinars presented by Lab Manager Magazine. My name is Jeff Tobe, and to everyone in the Northeastern United States, I apologize for what I'm about to say. You will hear background noise in my portion. I will definitely mute when I'm not speaking as host. And the background noise is because I'm sitting looking at the beach at Cabo San Lucas in Mexico. And what can I say? I moved aside all the drinks with umbrellas in them so that we could do this today. So I just wanted to rub that in a little for those of you enjoying the beautiful cold weather in the Northeast U.S. So many of you are loyal participants, and I hope you're still getting as much or more out of these webinars as when we started 3 years ago. With your input, we have painstakingly compiled our webinar offering for 2013. And thank you. You know who you are, but somebody sent us a suggestion last month, and we have rearranged the schedule for 2013 to include the topic that I think will be of interest to everybody down the road. Please let us know if there are any topics you'd like to see addressed in upcoming sessions. We want to make sure you're getting what you need out of these webinars. Just email me directly at jeff@jefftobe.com. That's jeff@jefftobe.com. Before we go any further, I'd like to introduce our gracious and generous sponsor, Fran Klisch of Unity Lab Services. Fran?
Thanks, Jeff. We're very proud to be a sponsor of such a valuable educational webinar series for lab managers. I'm especially curious to hear today's topic on how to read minds and influence people, and hoping that perhaps later in the day I can use this information with my manager to send me on a trip to Cabo San Lucas. So to those of you who've attended previous webinars, you've heard me talk about our Unity Lab Services brand, which we developed specifically to maximize your lab workflow and increase productivity. So as you can see on your screen, in addition to our traditional instrument-level service offerings, such as support plans, training, parts and accessories, we offer a full suite of enterprise service product lines offered at the lab, site, or enterprise level. We provide these service solutions for all equipment in a lab, regardless of manufacturer, to provide service solutions without boundaries. As you can see, our enterprise services are consulting services, supply management services, asset management services, and scientific support services. We recognize that lab managers, like yourself, are asked to balance a wide variety of activities to achieve the best results within a lab. Our vision is a lab where your teams are enabled to work on top priorities and non-core work is streamlined. Our solutions will enable your lab to leverage our best practices and processes from over 100 years of experience serving thousands of labs. We'll help you streamline supply management, where our teams set up and manage well-stocked, well-organized supply rooms located close to point of use. In addition, we'll streamline instrument and equipment service management, so that with one call, you can request service on any instrument or equipment, regardless of manufacturer, and let our team handle the scheduling, following up, and the on-site hosting of service providers. Today, I'm also very, very pleased to highlight our enterprise service product, Smart Capture Asset Utilization Monitoring, which we launched last year. And we're very excited about the capabilities this provides. It's a combination of software and service expertise to provide laboratory business intelligence for smarter decisions. So for the very first time, you can make decisions based on your actual equipment usage data from all makes and models of lab instrumentation and equipment. This information will provide you the knowledge to make informed decisions, balance instrument workload, identify redeployment opportunities, and optimize instrument and equipment service levels. All of this, of course, enables you to reduce your downtime risk, cut capital expenditures, and decrease equipment maintenance costs. We would absolutely enjoy talking with you about how Smart Capture or any of our products can drive cost savings, improve your lab's productivity, and power smart lab decisions. To learn more about Smart Capture or any of our services, visit unitylabservices.com, and please enjoy today's webinar.
Thanks so much, Fran. I hope you'll all consider Unity Lab Services for your lab, and especially Smart Capture. They're the reason that we're able to bring you some of the top thought leaders in the world on a monthly basis. Today's webinar is how to read minds and influence people, and once again, we've outdone ourselves with almost 1,000 registrants. Before I introduce our presenter, please know that Michel welcomes your questions throughout his presentation, Many of you know the drill, but those joining us for the first time, just type in your query in the chat box. We'll try to get to it during our short time together. Also, I wanted to let you know to make sure that everyone has access to the webinar after the fact. So every webinar is posted up on the web about 1 week after airing, so you can get the entire presentation if you like. Stay tuned. I will send it out in the chat box. I'll send you the URL that you'll be able to go to, or just go to labmanager.com website, click on website and podcast, and you'll get all the presentations. So let's get on with the reason you're here. Our speaker today is Michel Neray. He's a speaker. You can find him at neray.com. He's founder, producer, and MC of MoMondays.com, Chief Differentiation Officer at EssentialMessage.com, the McGill University Faculty of Management, Marketing Expert Panel, 2008 President, 2011 Co-Chair of Programming for the Canadian Association of Professional Speakers, and an all-around great guy. Please help me in welcoming my friend, Michel Neray.
Well, thank you, Jeff, for that very nice introduction.
You're welcome, Michel. And I know that unlike a lot of the past webinars, we asked the question of our audience before they actually got on today. And we had some interesting answers. Your question was what drew them to the webinar. Mm-hmm. And I do want to share one really quickly, and that is that if this is about reading minds, you should know why I'm here. I like that one. But did you want me to share a few of these with you?
Yeah, I'd love to hear some.
Great. Reading minds and influencing people. I need to find a better way to manage upwards. The timing was right for this webinar. I'm not sure if it's what I'm looking for, but I hope so.
Okay.
Here's another one. One more. As a manager, I'm always interested in hearing new takes on influencing and reading staff. Communication is a very important aspect of being a good leader. I'm always interested in educational opportunities that will improve my ability to communicate and make a good impression on people.
All right. Well, that's cool. Let's just work with those three. All three of them, even the one that says I should be able to read minds, they're all good responses, and they're all. I'm happy to say that that we will be addressing them, and we will be going over some of those things in this seminar. You know what? I want to make an assumption right from the very start, and I want to come right out and say that I am going to assume. Now we've got. I hear you say over 1,000 people. That's a big number of people on the call, and I'm going to make an assumption that everybody on this call is already an excellent communicator. You wouldn't be here if you weren't already good at what you do. You wouldn't be on this call if you weren't already successful, and part of being successful is being able to communicate in all kinds of ways, all kinds of situations. But I'm going to also assume that there are times when you're not quite sure what to say. You don't know perhaps how to engage people in an idea that you want to present. You're not really quite sure what will interest them. And you know, as a result of that, perhaps sometimes you don't speak up in meetings quite as often as maybe you should, and which is a big shame, because not only does that, in a very small way, might erode a little bit of your confidence. You second guess yourself, but also your company doesn't get the benefit of all your great ideas. And I think that's perhaps at the back of the minds of everybody who has come on this webinar. And so if we could show you in this webinar an incredibly simple template that will help you collect your thoughts very quickly, so that you get to the point you understand really what's going on. It's almost like you're reading the little voice in the back of the other person's mind about what they're interested in, and you get so good at this that you could do it almost second nature. It's just, this is what you do. And if I could show you how to do that, that's what you'd be interested in. That would be helpful to you. And that's exactly what we're going to do in this webinar. So the first thing I'd like to go over is really talk about, when I put together this webinar in the first place, is it a sales webinar? Is it a sales communication webinar? And I would say that the vast majority of everybody on this call are not into hard sales, not the kind of hard sales that we are generally familiar with. But let's look at this. I mean, Who sells? Well, when I say salesperson, obviously we think of the classic, I hesitate to say, tacky, used car salesman, shoe salesman, all of these kinds of people that fit into the classic category of sales. But who else sells? Well, presidents of companies sell. Oh my God, they're probably the hardest job of selling. They have to sell to, some of them sell to the end customer, as Richard Branson does. They sell to shareholders. They sell their vision to employees and strategic partners. And on the note of presidents, well, presidents sell all the time. They're selling their vision to the country. They're selling all kinds of ideas and proposals through the very many levels of government. It's all about communicating your ideas in a impactful, persuasive way. Who else sells? Well, obviously, you go on a job interview, you're selling yourself. When you are have an idea or a proposal within a company, you're presenting to your own team. If you've ever found yourself saying to the rest of the people on your team, is that, hey, maybe we should do it this way, you are, in fact, just about to start some kind of sales communication process. So who else? Well, you go to a networking event, and of course, we're always selling ourselves. This is the personal selling. We want to make a good impression on the other people that we meet. Well, if we're in a service situation, such as a doctor-patient situation, the doctor is even selling a kind of the treatment that they recommend to the patient. Hopefully, the patient is actually going to follow their recommendations. That is sales. That's all about persuasive communications. Well, here is perhaps the biggest sales job of all. And it lasts for life, hopefully. And I think when we run out of things to sell, it's game over. Life is about selling. Life is about communicating our ideas in a persuasive manner so that we listen to the other people, we understand what their needs are, and then we speak to those needs in a way that they say, yes, this is what I want. Well, let's do a little poll. Jeff, you ready with the poll? I'd love to do a little poll of what your idea of selling is. So on the screen, you see 4 options.
Great. And the poll says, just to, I know you can all see it, but you need to select one. Selling is forcing information down the other person's throat, giving people an offer they can't refuse, getting people to buy stuff they don't need, or getting your point across clearly, causing people to take action. And we have the numbers coming in. Michel?
Excellent.
It's still coming in, and we've got our answers. We've got forcing information down the other person's throat is 100%. No, I'm kidding. I'm just kidding.
Well, I was thinking it was certainly perhaps by the same person who said I should know what they want.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Giving people an offer they can't refuse, 6%. Getting people to buy stuff they don't need, 1%. And 92%, of course, said getting your point across clearly, causing people to take action.
All right. So this was a little bit of a humorous demonstration, but just goes to show how much our notion of what selling is kind of influences our perception. Most of us have a negative impression of selling, and so it makes us feel a little bit awkward. But I think logically that selling is all about getting your point across clearly in a way that makes the other person want to take action. And that is exactly what we're going to do in this webinar. So in this webinar, you are going to learn how to start a conversation to improve the chances of finishing with some kind of nod of agreement, or you've got a point, or I'll think about it. That is what we want. I'm also going to show you how to elicit the needs and wants of the other person or people so that they understand the value that you offer, or why your idea is worth considering. And the third thing I'm going to show you is how to create a burning platform to motivate your listener to take action now, hopefully, but really create a mind space for the other person to say, I need to do this. Now, there is one more thing I'm going to show you to do, and that is by the end of this, you will have a one-page template that if you use it on a regular basis, you will quickly be able to gather your thoughts together, put your best assumptions down on what the other person is interested in, and really formulate your opening conversation. Or if you're writing a proposal letter, it would be the cover to your proposal, and you'll be able to write it literally in 3 to 5 minutes. And I know that's what stops a lot of people. They're just not quite sure how to start the conversation or how to write a cover letter of what this is about. And so by the end of this webinar, you will have a template. And the more you use it every single time you go into a formal sales type conversation. I don't mean a true sale, but anytime you go into a meeting, you want to convince or convey your idea or your proposal, your suggestion, anytime, if you do that every single time you use this template, you will get to the point where you will get so good at it that it will feel to the other people as if you are reading their minds. But what are we going to do? What is communications? What is selling? What are sales communications? Well, in this particular webinar, I've combined a number of different things. Part of my background is in copywriting, so I've written, you name it, I've written it. Radio commercials, TV commercials, billboards where you only have like 3 words. I've written long copy, long brochures. I've written letters from the president and annual reports. I've written direct response where we can really measure exactly what you say, how it works, what kind of response you get. So we're going to be using some of those principles. We're going to be using some of the principles of core challenge analysis. More about that later. And if some of you are familiar with NLP, neuro-linguistic programming, which is really very much based in communication patterns that are embedded in all of us. And if we could tap into those patterns, we could become much more effective communicators. And the fourth thing we're going to go over is literally the principles of change management. Change management is a field of consulting that became popular around 20 years ago when companies were going through massive change, and they came up with some principles that help them move people into the new change or the change culture or whatever it is that they wanted to do. So let's get right to it. This is everything you need to know about this webinar. We're going to go over the 4 quadrants in more detail, but this is it. It's so simple. It is a one-page template that allows you to collect your thoughts so that you walk in knowing probably what the people that you're going to be speaking to, what's in the back of their minds, what they're thinking, and how to elicit those things so that it becomes part of the conversation. Now, I know some of you are looking at this because this is, of course, sales telepathy, and some of you are saying, oh, I know what that is. That is a SWOT analysis, but it's not. SWOT analysis is, if those of you who are in sales or sales management or management of a company, you've probably done a fair number of SWOT analyses. But SWOT analyses are almost always based, no, not almost, they're always based on the competition and their strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, threats. This is a little bit different, so a modification of that. And these quadrants are in a specific order that will allow you to write your cover letter or open your conversation really, really quickly. It's in a very, very intentional and specific order. And of course, there's that magic dotted line box at the bottom. That is the secret sauce of this whole thing, and we'll be talking about that. So let's move on. We'll talk about each of the quadrants individually. Strengths. So if you were to think about the people that you are about to speak to, and you ask yourself, what are the things that they or the company have done well in the area that I provide. In other words, we have a tendency in sales and in any kind of sales communication to focus on the gaps or the weaknesses. And there's so many good reasons why we want to start with the strengths. So you might be thinking, okay, why start with the strengths? You might, oh, I know what he's doing. You just want to butter up the other person. Or you want to build rapport. You want to demonstrate respect, perhaps. You want to enter into a tacit agreement or contract on reciprocity. I'll go over that in a second. Or you want to start the conversation. All of these, starting with strengths does all of these things. And so it is so important. I'm going to spend more time on strengths than anything else. First of all, I want to talk to you about why we have in the area that I provide. Most of us would say, why do I want to acknowledge the things that they're already good at in the area that I provide, or that the proposal that I am going to be putting forward? Well, there are a lot of good reasons. First of all, you want to be able to really demonstrate your understanding of where the other people are at already. Now, I'll tell you a little story. When I was running my ad agency, I wanted to redo our brochure, our corporate brochure. And so I asked the designer into my office, and she came in, she sat down in front of me, and we started talking about the brochure. But within literally a couple of minutes, she was starting to talk about how my colors were wrong for the company, my website branding was wrong for the company, my tagline was wrong for the company. And could you imagine what was going on inside of me while she was telling me all of this? First of all, she was doing nothing to ingratiate herself, I'll tell you that. But also I'm thinking, like, if it's true what she's saying, then how did I possibly get to this level of success? I must be a numbskull. I must not know what I'm doing. Well, that's not true. I can't accept that conclusion. So therefore, I have to assume that she's wrong. And if she's wrong about that, she doesn't understand how we got to this level of success in the first place. How could she possibly give me a proposal or recommendation? How can I trust her with the look and feel of my company? So that is number one. You want to be able to demonstrate to the people in front of you that you understand their situation or their business, because you are going to build on it. And that's an incredibly important part of the process. We do understand that our value is based on the challenges we solve, how we fix things. That's where we're valuable to other people. But we have to start with an acknowledgement of the strengths. I'll tell you another reason why it's so important to start with strengths, is because I do believe, as you know, the very, very first image that came up with when we talked about who does sales, and we had the tacky picture of the used car salesperson. We know, we have our internal radar for when the person in front of us is being inauthentic. They're just trying to pull one over on us. They're trying to snow us. They don't really respect us. They just want to sell us. So the reason why it is so important to start with your own acknowledgement of what the other people have done well in the area of the proposal that you're going to put forward is because you want to get grounded in respect. You want to come from a place of respect and honoring the success that they have achieved to date. Because if you don't, they'll pick it up. Their internal radar will pick it up. So you need to really be clear about that for yourself. Now, let's go back to the thing that's the statement at the top of this list, to butter up the other person. Does that happen? Well, yeah. I have to tell you, I am in a better mindset when you are complimenting me than when you're not. Straight and simple. That's just the fact of life. That's how we're wired as human beings. That's all about building rapport. Rapport is very important in the field of NLP, where we talk about you can't move forward at all unless you have rapport. And rapport really is some kind of acknowledgement from going both ways to each other that the other person has value and is worth listening to and is worth consideration. That's what rapport is all about. It's respect and integrity for the relationship that we have between us. You do want to demonstrate respect. I've talked about that. And here's a very interesting thing, especially if you're starting a conversation and you haven't actually started by saying, in this presentation, I am going to talk about X, whatever it is that you're going to talk about. Doing it this way fixes the other person's mind on the field, on the focus that you are going to be talking about in the rest of the conversation. So it's helpful for you to do this ahead of time, where you walk in, or before you walk in, you actually jot your ideas down of what has the other person done well in the area that I'm going to be talking about. Or if you want to change things with your team, you want to put forth a proposal, well, the proposal is about it being in a certain area. So how do we improve efficiency in the lab, for an example? So you really want to know, what are the things we've done right in improving efficiency already? So that's a very, very important thing. So now we know we're going to be talking about efficiency in the lab. And we also know that here are the things that we've done well, and you're going to talk about how we could build on those things, as opposed to the classic way of, here's what's wrong, here's how we should fix it. It just doesn't build rapport. It doesn't work. Now, the other reason is the second one from the bottom, to qualify the prospect. What does that mean? It means that if you can't find anything of value that they have already done well, if they've done everything wrong, and you really believe that, then chances are they're not going to take into consideration what you have to offer. You're going to have to place such an education job on the other people that chances are they're just too far gone, they don't understand, and you're going to spend all your time and energy just getting to the place where they're going to acknowledge at least what you have may have some value. So you have to ask yourself, is this worth going through with? Is this worth putting all my time and energy? Maybe I should talk to people who are a little bit further advanced, more enlightened in this area, because they will more easily recognize the value that I have to offer. And the last point is to play mind game on yourself. Well, that goes back to my earlier point where I said you have to come from a place of genuine, authentic respect for the other person. And when you do this ahead of time, you really fix in your minds, what do I appreciate? What do I value? What do I think the other person has done well? What do I respect about the other people? So that's a very, very important part, because, like I said, they recognize. Have I beaten a dead horse already? But it's so important. And I know that many other people who do communications courses, they talk about this a little bit, but I believe the ones I've seen anyway, they pay lip service to this. And so as a result, we still want to jump to, what are the problems that we fix? What's wrong with the situation? What needs to change? And I'm asking you to hold off. Now, interestingly enough, I was talking to a professional salesperson about this, and he said, you know, Michel, when I do this, when I spend so much time, like literally maybe 10, 15, 20 minutes, depending on how much time I have with the other person, on what's going well with the other person in the area that I provide, then they end up telling me what their needs are. And so even if you do this ahead of time, you want to talk about it and use it as part of the conversation as if you really don't know, because you may discover something new. You want to come from a place of genuine curiosity of what they believe is going right, what they believe they've done really well. And that puts them in the right mindset to take what you have into consideration. It puts you in the right mindset of coming from a place of respect and integrity. And the more you do this, the more you come to realize that the people you do best with, the people that you have the most success with are the ones who do a certain number of things well. And they're very specific things. So that's why I say the more you do this, the more you realize, generally when I talk to people about what I have to offer, they're good in X, Y, Z. Well, if I could demonstrate I understand that, at least that's the very beginning part of showing that I understand where they're coming from, their business. Okay, let's move on. I told you about this professional salesperson who said, when I spend enough time on this, then very often the person sitting on the other side of the table says, but Mike, that was his name. His name was Mike. He said, Mike, I'm making it sound like we're perfect, and we're far from perfect. Ah, that's where we want to go. But wouldn't it be better? Well, that's the poll. So, Jeff, here's another poll. Is it better to tell the other person what their faults are, or is it better to ask the other person what they think their challenges might be?
Great, Michel. So we'll have people check in. Please make sure that you don't put it in the chat box. Some of you last time gave me your answers. I appreciate it, but they didn't count in the poll. And people are voting. We've got about 40% in. Let's keep this going. And Michel, we're getting some questions too if you're interested along the way. But we can do those whenever you like.
Oh, that's a great idea. I love questions throughout the presentation, so please.
Good. All right, we've almost got everybody in. All right, we'll stop it there. And the poll basically says 93% ask the other person about what they think their faults are.
All right, so I think I've proven myself, the person who said you should know what's in the back of our minds, and I do. And that's very, very good. I'm expecting almost all of you to say the second one. It's better to ask the other person. Remember I said at the very beginning, I'm going to make an assumption. And the assumption is that all of us are already good communicators. You know this stuff. This is exactly what you should do. It's always better to ask the other person what they think their challenges are. And I'll tell you, it even goes back to this little scenario that I was telling you about when I was taking a professional salesperson, Mike, through this process. And he says, you know what, when I do this with my prospects and the people that I deal with, they say, Mike, you know what, making it sound like we're perfect, we're far from perfect. Let me tell you where we're really having our challenges, because that's where you want. And then you have a whole discussion about what their challenges might be. Now, if you do this template ahead of time, you've put down your best assumptions of what they are. And that's great, because you could focus the conversation in that area. So, Jeff, let me take a couple of questions.
Perfect. One comment and a question that someone had, and that is that you sound like you're talking about positive thinking. So do we always start with highlighting strengths even though we only see weaknesses?
Well, it's related but different from positive thinking. It actually comes from another field of study called appreciative inquiry. Appreciative inquiry is a method of facilitation so anytime you go into a meeting and you're doing a debrief about an event or something that you have a team meeting, okay, most of the people said, here's what went wrong. Appreciative inquiry is a method of facilitation that says, here's what went right. Because you want to be able to repeat what went right, you need to know what it is. You need to fix those in your head. When you focus on what is right, you could build on what worked. And now I believe that you also need to look at the gaps, but start with what is working right. Very good point. Thank you for that question. Do you want to, was there another one you want me to?
Yep. One more. Where does the conversation go if they say that they really do not have any faults?
So good question. First of all, hypothetically you could imagine that, but in practice, no one doesn't have faults. We all have some faults, but what may happen is if they say they don't have faults, I'll tell you, it's because they don't trust you yet. You haven't built the rapport. You haven't demonstrated that you're trustable. You haven't demonstrated that you understand their business and you understand what they've done right to date. It's very simple. So go back to square one. Well, what are you doing right? What's working for you? You know, there's something I talk about in some of the other work I do. I help my clients, both individuals and corporations, I help them drill down to what I call their essential message. And some people would put their essential message into some sort of elevator pitch, although I really don't agree with the whole concept of elevator pitches, but that's a different webinar. But I start off by asking the question, says, how many people in this room, when I'm doing a keynote, how many people in this room are comfortable and confident with the way that they described what they do? And you know what? There are always a couple of people who raise their hands and say, yeah, me. But you know what? If they really are, I want to know. Because maybe they know something I don't. I want to learn from them. So it's a possibility. But most people, if they're honest, and it still allows you to engage them in a conversation, you say, great. Again, let's go back. What do you do? I want to learn what you do. Because if I could package what you do really, really well and you've got no challenges, I want to sell it. So really, if people say they have no challenges in the area that you provide, then it's possible it's true, but unlikely. Chances are you haven't built the rapport with them. They don't trust you enough to actually divulge those things to you. And please, whatever you do, never ask the question, what keeps you up at night? Don't do that. I'll tell you why. Or don't ask what's your biggest challenge. First of all, because chances are you have not built up the trust and rapport that you really need to have in order to ask such a question. You're asking an incredibly important question. You're asking, what is your deepest, darkest, biggest challenge? Holy cow. Will they really be honest with you? Do they even know what that is? And the second reason why you shouldn't ask that question is that it actually engages the fight or flight part of the brain. Because what they're doing is they're saying, well, I know I've got these 3 challenges, but I don't know which one's the biggest. And, oh, my God, maybe this one's bigger than the other one. And because you've asked them 2 questions in one. You've asked them what's their challenge or some of their challenges, and you've asked them what is the single biggest challenge. Well, that's a lot of information for brains to handle in one. And, you know, you probably have some competing ideas that are in their head that are trying to come out of the same mouth. And what happens is what I call brain freeze. So it actually engages the amygdala part of the brain, literally the primitive part of the brain, and they can't do it. So far better to start with the easy, what we call the low-hanging fruit. So what are some of the things that are frustrating you around here? What are the little things that you wish you could fix? And that will get you onto a conversation of bigger and bigger challenges that you can solve and you can help with. All right, let's move on. So that's what this is. Far better for the other people to actually tell you what their faults are or their challenges and weaknesses are, their gaps, than you, Mr. Know-It-All or Ms. Know-It-All, say, here's what I think you are doing wrong. Who wants to hear that? So that's pretty straightforward. We don't need to spend a whole bunch of time with this. It's not the content of this slide that's difficult to understand, and it's where it fits in nation. Absolutely, you want to fix in your head before you go into the situation what you think their gaps and weaknesses are. But if there's any way, once you get into the situation, you get them talking about it, that's even better. So where do we go from here? Well, here we're going to talk about the burning platform. The burning platform actually comes from a, at the very start of this webinar, I told you that we were going to use some of the principles of change management theory. And this comes straight out of that. But it actually, even before that, It comes from a real incident that happened in the North Sea off the coast of Scotland. And what happened was this. In the middle of the night, on an oil rig somewhere out in the sea, this worker woke up and he smelt smoke. And he realized that there was a fire. And that fire got bigger and bigger, and soon he was engulfed in smoke. He made his way to the edge of the platform. Now you've got to remember, the edge of the platform, these guys know how high they are off the water, and in the North Sea of Scotland, they also know how cold it is. And he's looking down. He can't see the ocean, but he knows it's something like 280 feet down, and he jumps. Now, thank God he survives. And they asked him, said, what was going through your mind when you jumped? What made you jump? And his answer was absolutely reasonable. He said, you know what? Behind me, flames, smoke, certain death. In front of me, probable death. I think I'll choose probable death. And in his case, he picked right, obviously. But that is what people in general don't take action unless they are absolutely forced to. It's just some of us are change-oriented. I happen to be one of those people, but most of us are not. Most of us don't like change. We are comfortable with the way we operate our lives, our businesses, our careers. When things are working kind of okay, why change? Why upset the apple cart? Well, I said most of us are change averse, but some of us look for change. We have to create the proverbial burning platform for the people in front of us, and we do it very simply. Well, before we go on to that, I'll tell you one more thing. He said, we talk about, this comes straight out of neuro-linguistic programming, NLP. We categorize people into two types, where most of us are either away people or toward people. So an away person is someone who is more motivated to take action because he or she wants to move away from pain. So clearly the person on the oil rig was moving away from pain. He didn't say, I can't wait to jump into that beautifully cold water. He said, I got to get out of here because the flames are going to engulf me any second now. That is a classic example of an away person. A toward person is exactly the opposite. I want to take action. I want to go to somewhere different, either metaphysically, metaphorically, or physically, because I want those. I am interested in the benefits that thing has to offer. Now, Jeff, I'd like to do a quick little poll because I'm sure a lot of people on this call are wondering, I wonder if I'm an away person or a toward person. So here's a simple thing. Why do you want to go on vacation? And you've got two choices. Primarily to have a break from the pressures and routines of daily life, kind of like to get away from it all, or because you really want to, in your case in Los Cabos, Jeff, to feel the sand between your toes, to enjoy the sunsets, or if you're like Kaylee, to ski the powder in Revelstoke. So let's do this as a poll.
Polls opened up, and we've got over half the people voting. As I get the sand off my feet.
Ha ha ha.
For those of you that don't know what we're talking about, you weren't with us at the beginning, I will apologize one more time for any background noise, but it's the sound of frozen daiquiris clinking as I sit in Cabo San Lucas, Mexico. Okay. Poll is almost done. And, wow, closer than I thought. We've got 40% like to take a break and 60% like to feel the sand between the toes.
All right, and yeah, that's good. By the way, there are no right or wrong answers with this one. There were with the other two polls, but this one, it's how you perceive yourself to be. Now, here's the truth. most of us like to think of ourselves as toward people. Most of us like to think of ourselves as positive, benefit-oriented people. I can tell you beyond a shadow of a doubt, as an advertising and marketing copywriter, that most of us, whether we care to admit it or not, are away people. We do things because there are problems or challenges or things we don't like in our lives. Most of us. Now, I'm going to tell you something else. You know, anything, NLP is no different. They like to really separate people black and white. You know, exactly, you're either an away person or toward people. Well, my experience is that we're all a little bit of both. And we might be one type of person for vacations, and we might be another type of person for upgrading our computers. So you might say, yes, when it comes to vacations, I can't wait to feel the sand between my toes. But when it comes to upgrade my computers, it's because I can't stand the fact that my computer keeps freezing. I got to do something about it. And I go out and buy a new computer. But this concept of moving away from pain or moving towards a benefit is a very useful concept to have. So how do we do that? Well, we do that with the third quadrant, and that's risks. So the risks, you get the risks like by asking this question. What are the implications if you don't address the issues that we talked about in quadrant 4? So in other words, we talked about the challenges that you had and the challenges that you perceive. Well, you know what? The do nothing option is always an option. You could do nothing about it. Now let's play that forward 2 or 3 months or 2 or 3 years. You got to choose whatever time frame is appropriate for you. And when you do that, you say, well, you know, what's going to happen? Well, I suppose, going back to the efficiency problem, well, I suppose the efficiency is going to keep eroding in the lab, or and you have a conversation about that. So what else might happen? Well, you know what, I think probably it'll, not only will it erode the efficiency in the lab, but it's probably going to contribute to a negative culture around here. I already see it happening. We're starting to argue with each other, and it's just it's not the kind of place I want to work. Or what at some point, you know, the managers or the executives of the company are going to come down harder on us, and I don't, or my bonus is at stake, or this is what we want to explore with the other people. So if we don't do anything about the challenges that we identified in quadrant 2, what are the negative implications that are likely to happen? And what we're doing is we're emotionally and mentally creating a burning platform in the minds of the people that we're speaking with. So we're creating a burning platform because we're taking a hypothetical situation that may happen down the line, 2-3 months or 2-3 years, and we're making that present today. So in other words, going back to the guy who's on the oil rig in the ocean, says, if I don't do anything about this, I am going to die. I better jump. That is what this quadrant is all about. So in many sales communications or persuasive communications courses and programs that I've seen, they talk about challenges, and the slight distinction in this one that I'm showing you is we separate those challenges into 2 parts. One is, what are the challenges that we see right now? Another way that you could phrase that, so quadrant 2, what are the symptoms that we see right now? If you were a doctor, you'd say, well, what are the presenting symptoms? What do you see that's frustrating, that's bugging you? And then the third quadrant, slight difference, is if we don't do anything about this, what are the bigger problems that are going to happen as a result, that you're going to experience as a result? And you'll see in this one I talk about the direct and indirect, because there's a ripple effect. Any problem or challenge has a ripple effect in other parts of their lives, businesses, career, etc. So let's move on. Very simple. The fourth one is the exact opposite of the third one. So in other words, on the other hand, if we could fix those things that we talked about, what are the things that you'd be able to get as a result? Really, this is, well, tell me what you like, what you really, really like. This is, what are the benefits? And they're exactly the opposite. Well, we'll improve efficiency, I'll get my bonus, management will be really pleased with me, I'll get a promotion, I'll be held up as an example, I'll have my ego stroked. Whatever it is that's important to you, then those are the things that you want to talk about. Be careful about saying things like getting your ego stroked. But if the other person says it, great, I'll feel really good about myself. That's what you want to hear. And that's where you want the other people to be. And now, I talked about the special sauce. So in between quadrant 3 and quadrant 4, there's this dotted line box. And the dotted line box basically says, and that's why that's why we have in our proposal this particular thing, because it addresses the specific issue or challenge that we identified in quadrant 2. If you can do this entire template and you could connect what's in this little dotted line box with the challenges that you think are the presenting challenges or the things that are some of the issues that the people that you're speaking to, what they're facing, you could connect these two things and it makes sense, then you know you've done this template right. Now this is the hard part, because you have to make sure that they're connected, and sometimes it could be, and that's why in this proposal we address this tiny little area that we've always missed. We've forgotten about it, or we skipped over it. But that's the key to fixing some of these bigger problems. And that's why I've included it in this proposal. So let's move on. Here it is again. It's a complete conversation. Quadrant 1. What are the things that you and your company have done well in the area that I provide, or in the focus of my proposal, my suggestion, my idea, whatever it is? A template is only as good as your ability to adapt it to your needs. So that's what this is. It's a template. Quadrant 2, weaknesses and gaps. What are some of the challenges that you face going forward in the area of, again, the focus of your proposal, idea, suggestion? 3, this is where you create the burning platform. What will happen if we don't do anything about it? Quadrant 4 is, on the other hand, if we can fix those issues, and if we do those things, what are the good things that we'll get as a result? And the dotted line secret sauce is, and that's why so you say, hey, listen, I know, and what I'd like you to do is think back exactly to how I opened this webinar, because I demonstrated this exact structure when I introduced the topic of the webinar. I said, I'm going to make an assumption. Everyone on this call is already a good communicator. I said that sometimes you're not quite sure how to collect your thoughts or put your ideas down in a way to open the conversation with the people that you're speaking to. And as a result, you may not speak up as often as you did. You see, I'm in quadrant 3 now, and your confidence may go down. Your company has a problem because they're not getting the benefit of your best ideas, and so on and so on. And that's why I'm going to show you this very simple and straightforward template that will enable you to collect your thoughts very rapidly and go into a meeting, a proposal, a sales meeting, whatever it is, and instantly be able to cover your key points of your argument in a way that helps the other people give you a nod of agreement that will consider your idea and proposal in a good light. There we are in the rewards. Does that make sense to everybody? I can see everybody's hand going up. So, Jeff, I think for the last few minutes, I'd like to ask this question.
Are we okay?
We are.
Oh. And the question is?
How and when could you use this? Like, what do you think you might, where do you think you might be able to use this template? And I'd love to get some feedback, suggestions from the people who are listening and watching this webinar. It says, when is the next possible opportunity that you could pull out this template, collect your ideas ahead of time, and then use it as a conversation guideline for when you're actually in your meeting?
Got it. And I can give you some of the answers. We've got a lot of questions coming in, too. All right. So applying the template, interviewing for a job, annual evaluations. I'm just going to run through these. Performance evaluations, performance review, everywhere, anytime, any situation in life as well as at work. Upcoming strategy change meeting with the CEO. When I'm addressing the need to purchase new equipment. That's come up a couple times here, so that must be a big one.
Yeah.
And to set annual performance goals.
Great. So the person who said anytime, it's like you say, hey, honey, you know, you've always picked the restaurant, and you've done such a good job of it, and that's great. And if we keep going back to those same places, well, you know, maybe we're going to get bored with it. And I want to put some spice into our relationship, so let's go to this restaurant for once. You really can use this anywhere, and I'll love you so much for it. So there it is. Those are the 4 quadrants right away. But yeah, excuse me. Yeah, those are all perfectly viable and great opportunities to use this template. So let's talk about the one about equipment. It says, are we good at buying new equipment? We're good at and obviously we need to tailor it specifically in the area of what is the equipment used for. So how are we already doing a good job in this area? Or how is the management doing a good job in deciding which equipment to buy and which equipment not to buy or postpone? So you really want to acknowledge that. Those are very, very important things to fix in your head before you walk into that meeting.
Michel, I'm going to have to kind of cut you short, and we're running out of time. Unfortunately, I think people could listen to you forever. The most pressing question that I keep getting is, why do you have a cat on your head?
Oh, I'll answer. Thank you very much. I love it when I get asked that question. I'll answer it very quickly. I have a cat on my head because this was originally developed as a template for a sales communication. And when I was brainstorming creative ideas with my art director, we were saying, well, how do you know what's in your client's head? It's kind of like, how do you know what your cat is thinking? And boom, that's how the cat came on my head. Thank you very much for asking that question.
Perfect. Michel, I'm going to put you on the spot, but we do have a lot of questions, and we've run out of time. I know you well enough to be able to say that Michel will get to your questions offline in the next little while. Have some patience. He's a busy guy, but we'll get the questions to him. And Michel, if you wouldn't mind just emailing the people directly if we give you their email address, would that work?
Sure. Or there is a contact form on this webpage, www.neray.com/contact. Anybody could use that contact form, and I'd be happy to respond.
Great. Great. And the one question pressing here is, how do we get a copy of the the quadrants? A lot of people have asked that. Is that somewhere on there as well?
I'll tell you what. I will make that handout available in a PDF form to Kaylee.
That's great. And Kaylee will get that out to everybody who registered, so we can do that from our end. That's great. Michel, thank you so much for your insight and, as always, your knowledge. The archive of this webinar, don't forget, can be found at www.labmanager.com. And as you can see, if you're interested in contacting Michel directly, just email him at his email address. One of the ones I have, which is a short one, is mn, as Michel Neray, mn@neray.com. And don't forget, Michel is available. He does speak and train and consult, like all of our presenters. He's available to help your organization with his very niche expertise. Hope you enjoyed this session. And again, I apologize for any background noise. I'd like to thank our sponsor, Unity Lab Services, without whom this webinar series wouldn't be possible. And next month, mark your calendar for the first Wednesday of the month for Leading Change with professional speaker Ed Oakley. I know it's going to be a great one. Watch your email for more details. Again, it's my honor and my privilege to be your host. Michelle, thanks so much for spending the time. And until next month, this is Jeff Tobe urging you to keep coloring outside the lines.